Well, Enjinstarter is, we always call ourselves ecosystem builders. Though we carry the name Engine, we have built ourselves on multiple chains.
So you've got the community side, which are, if I may call, the investors into your platform. And on the other side is you have startups, these Web3 startups in different domains and different subjects, different sectors, which connect themselves to your launchpad.
Intent really is to kind of source projects from all around the world, ensure that they meet our stringent criteria, meet what we call a triple bottom line, right? It has to make money, it has to serve a purpose, and it has to make the world a better place.
I want to welcome you to the second season of Couchonomics with Arjun. Join us this season as we go beyond fintech and payments and embark on the journey into the future of financial services, a future which will be shaped by existing and new developments in technology and innovation, including and not limited to the likes of embedded finance, open banking, ESG, various versions of metaverse, decentralized finance, digital currencies, and other trends. On the couch, we're going to have the most influential and progressive-minded founders, executives, investors, regulators, innovators, and industry commentators from across the MENA region and beyond. Join us as we unravel a multitude of layers of the financial services industry and try to learn how technology will continue to impact the world that we live in. Couchonomics with Arjun is proud to collaborate with some of the most respected and innovative names in the world of payments, fintech, and technology. Arjun is a reliable end-to-end payment solution that provides innovation and flexibility to help businesses achieve their ambition faster by turning payments into a strategic growth driver. Get everything you need with 2U, a Saudi-based super app for delivery, mobility, on-demand services, and a lot more. 2U connects you to everything you need to enrich your daily lives by building an ecosystem across its end consumers, merchants, and reps. Visa is a world leader in digital payments, with a mission to connect the world through the most innovative, convenient, reliable, and secure payments network to enable individuals, businesses, and economies to thrive. GDA is a leading fintech and payment solution provider founded in Saudi Arabia, expanding rapidly across the region with established operations in UAE and Egypt. GDA's vision is to empower merchants with the tools to start, manage, and grow their business. M2P pioneers next-gen fintech through innovative offerings across payments, lending, and banking landscapes. Their comprehensive tech stack powers end-to-end banking services, BNPL, customized credit cards, prepaid cards, and more.
So welcome to today's episode of Couchonomics with Arjun. I'm your host, Arjun. I guess after 50 episodes, you would have figured that out. Joining me on the couch today is not only a colorful personality, but one who's actually quite colorfully dressed today. And I didn't ask him to do that. It's Prakash. Prakash is the co-founder and CEO of Enjinstarter. Enjinstarter is a launchpad which is headquartered in Singapore and has recently opened shop in Dubai, UAE, apparently earlier in the year. I met Prakash at an event. I think it was a Crypto Oasis event, I think a few months ago. And I guess we immediately hit it off, got talking about what he was doing. 50% of it went right over my head. That usually is a good thing because that just increases my interest to get to know the person better and get to know what he's doing. We're going to be talking about some interesting topics, but before I extend this introduction, let me welcome Prakash to the couch.
Hey Arjun, thank you very much for having me on the couch. Yes, it has been an amazing journey from the time we first met at the event earlier this year. I've been following you on YouTube, and you've had amazing amount of guests. I'm very honored to be here today and look forward to having a good chat with you today.
No, I'm actually, I should say thank you because, I know you split your time between Singapore and Dubai, mostly in Singapore right now. I think the family's still there. Okay. But, thank you for making time on your recent trip. So I think a lot of our conversation today is going to roam around, or is going to be around Web3 and the role Web3 is going to play in commerce and I guess our lives and society going forward. But as I say, all my guests, whenever we talk about Web3, it's not the first or the last time we're going to have this conversation. And different people have different definitions for Web3, right? We can all Google and there is a generic definition. But I really want to hear Prakash's view. What does Web3 mean to you?
Sure. So I started my career during Web 1, right? I ran a web design firm. We charged a fee. We converted their corporate literature onto an online media. And at that point in time, it's only read only, right? And then, of course, Web 2.0 came about. That's where, I built a company that was, creating content and social networks. And we were quite fortunate. We had an exit with that. But during Web 2.0, there was a lot of conversations. We create a whole lot of content, but as content creators, we actually didn't own that, right? Someone else would pick that picture or pick that graphic and it becomes theirs, right? Where Web 3.0 is, we believe, is the current version of the internet. We're going through a new phase where there's a whole lot of disruption that's coming about, but this is where digital ownership is now going to become something very interesting to look out for. This is where content ownership becomes a big part of the play, and this is where you need a very integral part of technology, which is blockchain, right? So the blockchain enables us to actually own this piece of content. It could be anything that we create, and that becomes that integral part of what we are building, and that's primarily what we believe Web3 is about. It's a technology that's built on blockchain. It allows us to own certain digital content, transfer that ownership, and this is where we believe that it's going to be a whole new revolution, and it's going to change the way that we live, work, and play. And that's really what our excitement is about this space.
So Prakash, that stems two questions, right? And let me ask the first one, right? So there is this conversation around decentralization, right? With Web3, right? So I for one don't actually understand how decentralized can ownership be, for example, right? So is Web3 more of a movement? Is it more of a ethos? Or is it actually a destination? Because I struggle to see how we can achieve that level of decentralization as Web3 paints from where I sit today.
Sure. So let's once again look back at history, right? There were a lot of these content platforms that came. They didn't pay us anything. We gave them content freely. We gave them our time, which is a very valuable asset. We built these guys up, but we don't own anything with them, right? And now they've become such powerful platforms that actually owns the way that we think. It owns the way that we consume content. It also decides the way that we're going to be deciding which brand that we're going to be participating in, and so on and so forth, right? What we ideologically believe in the decentralized world, that won't be a central body that dictates this. It's people deciding, what they're going to talk about, what kind of content they're going to be consuming, and everything happens in a very decentralized way. And that's really what the blockchain industry is currently building. But again, it's going to take time, right? I mean, you can't trust people to decide everything, but you need to be able to build these building blocks, and that's currently where a lot of these startups are coming in, where they're curating content, they're decentralizing that, but they're using this as building blocks to actually build out this entire ecosystem. So we see this as an entire ecosystem play, right? Where the different partners, they're coming together, everyone kind of believes in this ideology, and they're coming in to say, I'm ready to commit my time, I'm ready to commit my craft, I'm ready to bring my game or my business onto this platform, and I'm going to start building with you, because everyone is looking towards a much bigger. So to answer your question, I would say it's a vision that we are all working towards. We are, it's definitely going to be shifting as we evolve, but ideologically, that's where everyone's headed.
So in simple terms, right? So just for someone like me to I'm a novice in this area. So I can understand that there is a certain level of decentralization we achieve to a certain layer, but at some level, and even if it's a regulatory angle, right, we will have to introduce some level of control, right? So is it Web 2.5 then?
It is, right? It is a journey. I think in order for us to get to Web 3, I think there's still a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built. Look, it took us more than 10 years to build Web 1.0. Of course, Web 2.0 took a lot faster because there was already that infrastructure. But to where we want to go, I think the 2.5 is where we're currently building from, right? And this is where we see a lot of Web 2 companies who already have existing communities coming into the space, and they have, existing content. They've built businesses before, and it's going to become a lot more scalable. But there's still a lot of work to be done. If I'm going to ask anyone out there to start a Web3 wallet, it still takes time, right? And people get very, very nervous because, you're going to be moving money, and, it's still not a very seamless experience. But a lot of that is being built. There are a lot of startups that are actually solving for that. And eventually it will be a consolidation, and that's currently what is happening today. In terms of regulation, we strongly believe that it's required in order for us to grow up and mature in this space. There is a lot of hanky-panky that happens in this space. It happens daily. And we can't build a structured business without regulations. And that's personally our excitement here in Dubai. From a regulatory perspective, they have progressed very, very well. And this is where companies like mine can actually come and build a long-term business, ensure that things are done in a fit and proper way, and bring a whole new level of trust into the ecosystem, which still is very lacking in the space.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to a couple of questions, including the Dubai angle, right? But my second question, when I said right out that, so should we not just boil Web3 down to blockchain and sort of focus our energies in terms of making sure that blockchain as a technology is properly leveraged across different use cases and subsectors? Wouldn't that just be an easier definition and to get everybody on board and understood and aligned?
Sure. It's the word blockchain sometimes, confuses people.
Okay. So you're saying blockchain confuses people, not Web3?
Well, yeah, I would say blockchain is the one that, people think it's Bitcoin, people think, it could be. But at the end of the day, even in Web 1 and Web 2, we don't tell people, my website is being hosted in this environment, or it's built on this language. People just want to experience things. And the real value that the platform builds is what we now need to communicate, right? And that's currently why a lot of our focus is on digital ownership in terms of, owning a piece of a game, owning a piece of a company that's being built, which now reintroduces a new approach towards digital ownership. Everyone gave away content and, whatever that they were building very freely. And now we're trying to take that back, right? So that's really where we've kind of built that narrative and letting the technology be at the back of it, right? So the people don't really need to understand where and how it's being built. And it should be the case, right? It needs to be very seamless. But at the end of the day, they need to have that aha moment that, this was only possible because it's being built on the blockchain, and this is why I'm, getting that value out of it.
I do want to talk about Enjinstarter, and we'll get to it very quickly, right? But before we go there, I've got one last question for you, right? And I want you to take a global perspective on this, right? Do you believe from where we sit today, and you take a 1 to 3 year horizon? Two-part questions. One is there sufficient capital currently chasing these Web3 businesses? Right, one. And second part question is, are you getting enough traction from the existing ecosystem of players, call them Web 2, who are willing to, adopt, implement these Web3 solutions in their environment?
So let me tackle the first question, which is around capital, right? And what we're looking at is risk capital. And this is where, a lot of VCs are actually participating in the space. Of course, it is an extended bear market that we're dealing with, and the retail market is definitely very, very slow. And I can, say that it is dry. But there are a lot of new Web 2 funds that are now coming into Web 3. A lot of Web 2 funds are also looking at getting token exposure, right? Which actually gives them additional liquidity and also a shorter window to actually get some return on investments. So we're definitely seeing a lot of capital that's flowing in the space, but not as what we saw in 2020 to 2022, where there was more money than projects and people were raising crazy amount of money. But things are a lot slower, a lot more sober now. But it's actually what we prefer, right? Where we go through the right deliberation process, we do the right due diligences, and this is a lot more comfortable for all of us. But to answer your question, definitely there is a whole lot of venture capital waiting to be deployed to the right projects. Having said that, a lot of interest has shifted into AI, right? So since the beginning of this year, when the whole ChatGPT space took off, definitely things got a lot lesser. But what we're seeing now is a lot of Web3 companies incorporating AI and now putting that spin in. And we're seeing that also even on our launchpad, right? So I guess, it's seasonal, it moves with trends, but we believe AI is going to be a much, much longer trend than what we saw with gaming and some of the other hypes that we have come across in the last 2 years.
Okay. And the second part of the question?
The second part of the question is actually, because it's a bear market, it's actually been the best time for Web 2 companies to actually come into Web 3. We're even seeing large brands now leverage Web 3, but they're all trying to find that use case, right? I think one very clear use case that's shaping up very well now is in the Web 3 loyalty space. We see big brands now leveraging, NFTs and Web 3. It doesn't stop, right? So that's really where we feel a bear market offers, because it's less frothy. Brands can now decide how exactly are they going to come in, how are they going to experiment it. And I think the narrative has shifted. It's not only about raising capital, but it's all about engagement. And I think that's the key thing that's currently driving. So we're definitely having a lot of conversations with brands, Web 2 companies running their own experiments, also at the same time quietly looking at the regulatory landscape, knowing exactly when to launch it. So no one's rushing into it, and we feel that this is a safer time to actually experiment and trial some of these key things, and that's one key thing that we're looking at.
Yeah, so when you say nobody's rushing it and it's taking its good time, while that's a great thing, it also means a lot of startups are going to unfortunately fall by the wayside.
For sure. There's a lot of consolidation that will happen. The Web 2 and the brands, they see this as an opportunity to do customer acquisition and customer retention in a more effective way, meaning they're not having to spend so much money in the things that they needed to do. That will currently continue. But of course, the smaller startups are definitely going to struggle to meet these brands and Web 2 companies, and definitely there'll be a lot of consolidation that's happening. It's already happening.
And do you see part of that consolidation as Web 2 companies swallowing up these Web 3 companies, the smaller ones?
It will be a very natural progression. Instead of acquiring them, it could even be an acqui-hire. And we're definitely seeing that already happening. One of our recent portfolio companies, they were meant to issue a token, but they got acquired by a esports company, only because it's going to be a lot easier to acquire what they've already built and kind of launch under a bigger brand. And some of these startup founders will accept it, right? Some of these guys are new in the game. It's a great platform. It's a risk-free couple of years ahead. And it's a great way that the ecosystem can grow.
Right. So let's ask the question, what is Enjinstarter?
Well, Enjinstarter is, we always call ourselves ecosystem builders.
Okay.
So we're not restricted to a chain, though we carry the name Engine. We have built ourselves on multiple chains. And I think really the inspiration of the company comes from my personal journey as an entrepreneur, where, I very realized in my journey that raising capital is really the most challenging thing when it comes to entrepreneurship, right? And raising capital as a young founder, we used to start, then we'll build, and then we'll try to start raising capital again, and never works that way, right? It's highly disruptive. And raising capital needs to happen on a very ongoing basis, right? And one key insight that I, was fortunate to gain in my journey is that the crowd can actually come in and participate in your idea if you can actually articulate that story well, put a good team in place, and allow people to actually participate in that journey, right? So, a lot of companies always dream about an IDO or an IPO. And that's really an end goal that a lot of people work on. Where we saw the Web3 community coming in is actually getting people to come in at an early stage, allowing them to get into some of these early stage opportunities that were only available to, a select group. You need to belong to a certain boys club, or you need to be a VC to actually get access to that. We felt that we could build a platform that can go out, secure some of these allocations, bring part of that to the community, and whatever that we get for the community goes fully to the community, right? So to answer your question, we primarily are a crowdfunding platform. We offer early stage allocations to our community. Our community buys and holds and stakes our token, and for whatever that they hold, they get allocations in projects. We secure these projects from time to time. The community comes in and participates in that, right? So the vision that we're working towards is being able to bring these early stage opportunities to the man in the street, and we identify asset classes that are forming and bring this down to the retail audience. So that's primarily our reason for existing.
Okay, so just to understand this. So what I'm hearing is you've got two sides to your business model. So you've got the community side, which are, if I may call, the investors into your platform. And on the other side is you have startups, these Web3 startups in different domains and different subjects, different sectors, which connect themselves to your launchpad.
That's right.
Correct. Right. Now, how do you select these companies?
Sure. Oh, well, we've got a very stringent list. We do a lot of due diligence because the trust is on us to actually find the right projects. Typically, we look for projects that already have a product, they have an audience, or they've already tested it with a certain test market before we actually identify them. And then we look at the tokenomics, right? What is the token utility? What's the long-term vision that they have for the tokens? And these are some of the key things that we look at. Of course, we look at marketing and hype because, the crowdfunding requires a lot of hype. So there are a lot of projects that we meet where they may be very strong technically, but they have not focused a lot on marketing and community acquisition. And this is where we actually spend more time with them under our incubation unit to actually help them grow that. But all around, we would say it's the team, it's the product, it's the pain that they're trying to solve, and the addressable community that they have. And through that, we know we can run a successful crowdfunding exercise.
Okay, so 3 questions here, right? One, so how many such companies are on your launchpad, if I may use that term currently?
Sure. So we have to date done about 50 plus.
Okay.
Where we have actually helped them raise anything from 75,000 to 300,000 per project. We have raised close to 10 million in the last 2 years, purely from our platform perspective.
Okay.
We've invested into 70 projects, and I guess some of them are still in the pipeline, waiting for the right time to get onto the platform. Some of them may need more support in growing the community. Some of them want to build a product before they actually get into a crowdfunding exercise. And during a bear market, we're happy they're actually doing that.
And so how, let's take the 50 or 70, whichever angle you want to take. What percentage of these actually came to your platform? What percentage of them you seeked out?
I would say it's hard to say that. I mean, we have scouts all around, helping us, working with VCs. We get a lot of recommendations from VCs that have invested in us and also very active in the space. Very, very thankful for that support. It's very symbiotic. We do attend events on a regular basis, and we also host a lot of events on a regular basis. And I think at this point of time, we are a bit more focusing a lot more on earlier stage companies, spending more time with them, being able to sit with the founders to actually identify those that are suitable for our platform. And this is where we provide them a lot more support. We invest anything from 25K to 100K. And once we are invested, we give them access to everything that we have, from marketing to some of the key opinion leaders that we have access to. And we spend a lot of time with them till the right time for them to actually.
So it's not just a funding game for you. You actually do bring in a whole range of, if I may call, non-financial input into it, whether that's mentoring.
Definitely. That's the main reason why people come to us. I think, you can raise money anywhere, but all that value added that we give them pre-fundraising, during the fundraising exercise, as well as post.
And so typically, how long do these companies stay on your platform before you think that they are grown up enough to go?
Well, they will stay with us, as long as they are still alive. I mean, unfortunately, some of them are, already shut down. But I would say that even post fundraising, we support them with a whole range of activities. We do, events for the alumni, both online and offline. Even if they're reached a stage where they're not going to survive, we find a way to integrate them. We find ways to actually consolidate them. And that's the support that we actually give them, even post fundraising.
So a lot of the Web3 conversation was around, gaming and metaverse and fashion, apparently. Yeah. What does your mix look like?
So that's where we started. We came into the space focusing a lot on gaming, and that was the trend at that point of time, right? And slowly we started evolving into entertainment. We saw that as potentially a very interesting space. And then when the metaverse hype was there, we also invested into a few metaverse projects. At this point of time, what's really doing very well on our platform is actually AI. So we've done about 6-7 projects since the beginning of this year, and the AI projects have done very well for them. We're still very blessed to have secured some of these allocations that we're very proud of. But things will trend, right? I mean, the market trends move very quickly. AI will continue to be there. And one of the key things that we believe is going to be the next big trend is in the climate finance space, right? I mean, we all, I personally feel we went from global warming to global boiling, and at this point in time,
don't tell me about it. I've just come back from a 2-week holiday, which was a lot hotter than I expected.
But you feel that, right? I mean, every call, every meeting that we go for, everyone now talks about the weather, whether we're in Singapore or whether we're in Dubai. It's the same thing. And really, I think this is where it's time for us to kind of look at ways that we can, play a small role in that. And that's currently what we have been focusing a lot. We believe that this will also kind of bring in a whole new range of people. Not everyone games, not everyone is keen on what AI can do for them, but everyone wants to make the world a better place, and that's where we feel it's going to be the next big trend, and that's something that we're currently building on.
Well, no, I just hope so, right? Don't call me cynical when I say, yes, everybody does want to make the world a better place. But my fear is that a lot of this conversation has been lip service and rhetoric, right?
Agreed.
And there's enough evidence to suggest over the last 4-5 years, and I think we're going to get into some metrics very soon on this, right? There's a lot of talk about climate and sustainability and stuff like that, but including lots of events and lots of high-profile people saying all the right kind of things. Follow through has, in my opinion, been a bit lukewarm, at least from where I sit. In any case, that's not a question to you. This switch for you, how substantial is this switch away from gaming, entertainment to impact?
Right. We see it as kind of an extension of what we have done.
Right.
Business as usual will continue. We'll still continue looking out for all the good gaming companies. But the real expansion really is what we're doing here in Dubai, where we're getting a license to run a regulated launchpad. And that launchpad will be purely focused on impact and sustainability, right? By regulated, what I mean is that the investors that we will onboard would only be accredited investors. And this is where we want to push up the quantums in terms of what we are helping startups raise to become a lot higher. And this is where we actually expose them to a whole range of accredited investors. The investors will come from all around the world, but they need to comply with the local regulations with regards to an AI. But this is where we feel that we can grow up, right? We've seen and we've built a successful business on tokens, but this is where we can now go further, right? We believe that the space will now need to mature, and this is where we're looking at using instruments to actually be asset backed. Right, so it can be backed against carbon credits, which are going to be issued by these companies. It could eventually be equity. It could be a whole range of ways that we raise capital, but it needs to be done in a proper, responsible way, where we ensure that the projects that we bring onto the platform, we've done the right due diligence. We are guaranteed that they actually have these projects. And end to end, it's going to be on the blockchain, right?
So Prakash, I'll ask the question. So why choose Dubai as the place to set up shop to pursue impact?
So coming from Singapore, we used to be a hub for a lot of things, right? I started out there in the fintech space. We still are a global fintech hub. And it was that progression that we took to get into the Web3 and digital asset space. But unfortunately, regulations have not caught up, right? Mm-hmm. And personally, having grown up in that ecosystem and have been a benefit of that ecosystem, I feel Dubai at this point in time is a lot more forward-looking and moving very, very quickly globally when it comes to regulations, right? We had 2 calls with the regulators, and they, invited us to participate in the sandbox, and we started furnishing them with all the right information as well as how our business operates, and they've been working very, very closely with us to ensure that we get the right cover and the right regulatory support. And that's something that we really, really feel is important because in anywhere around the world, the startup works in silo, and the regulator only comes in when we have done something wrong. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, a lot of us aspire to actually be regulated, to mature the company as we progress. And that's something that Dubai has offered us, and I feel a lot of it has happened very quickly, especially with VARA. And is really, really very exciting. And I believe this will attract startups from all around the world to come to Dubai to, anchor the company in a licensed manner and to build from Dubai into the rest of the GCC region.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to the whole Dubai UAE question in a bit. So I'm going to take a step back, right? Just for the sake of the audience, actually just for my sake too, right? Define impact and sustainability from the context of Web3.
Sure.
Right.
So again, we always look at the Web 2 or even the real world, right? There's a lot of people who are doing a lot of good. Say, for example, with forestation, right? There are a whole lot of work that's being done there, and you can create carbon credits out of that work. But unfortunately, a lot of that doesn't go onto the blockchain. And unfortunately, when that happens, people get into the space, there's double counting, they sell the same, carbon credit to multiple buyers, right? So that is the problem that has existed in the space. We believe the blockchain can now solve that, right? So we're starting off with, the proof of funding to make sure that these projects are being funded well. We ensured that the carbon credits are going to be created and brought onto the blockchain in a very effective manner. And when they get sold, they get retired effectively, right? So that's the key pain that we're trying to solve. It's a global problem, but there's also a growing global demand, right? So we're reaching a point, at this point in time, it's primarily the voluntary carbon market. There's also a compliance carbon market that's happening globally. There's going to be carbon tax that's being introduced in Singapore in 2025. Europe will probably, follow. And the need for carbon credits is going to become an integral part of a lot of carbon offset that a lot of larger companies are going to embark on. And we see this as a catalyst and where a lot of these startups, a lot of these project developers can now leverage these carbon credits as a means of raising capital for project financing, right? So this kind of catalyzes this global climate financing engine and is going to, introduce a whole new way where people are going to be raising capital, people are going to be participating in this space. And when it becomes law, it becomes a lot more supply. There's going to be a whole lot of new ways that people can participate in this space, right? We see carbon becoming a new asset class, right? Just like how we saw, any of the asset class that have come about, carbon is going to be this new asset class where large private equity firms are going to start operating in this space, and eventually it will be something, the man on the street is going to have to think about. We already, need to offset our carbon footprint when we fly. It's voluntary, but someday it may become taxable, right? Or the cost of goods is going to be more expensive if we have a big carbon footprint. And this is where companies are going to be purchasing some of these carbon credits to offset their carbon footprint. But we also believe that eventually this is going to, start this movement where people are going to look at ways to reduce their carbon footprint and adopt a whole lot of technologies and, business supply chain approaches to actually reduce their carbon footprint across their entire business.
Okay, so help me connect the dots out here, right? I read an interesting report. I think it's from November of 2022 from the Rockefeller Institute. I'll quote a couple of things from the report. It's actually quite an interesting report. The first one, which sort of caught my eye, was very worrying, is that it said that approximately 16% of the climate finance needs are currently being met, right? Which to me is a seismic shortfall, right? Because if you see all the rhetoric over the last 5 years, to be only having 16% of the need being covered. The second thing which caught my mind, and I think the numbers just sounded very high, at least to someone, is there's something somewhere in the region of about 3.5 trillion in what they alluded to as mitigation finance, right? Which is needed annually between 2020 and 2025, and we're closer to 2025 than we are to 2020. And I said, if this investment flow does not change, the resulting gap on the climate finance actually will increase, and not only increase at the top level, but even at the subsector level, right? How does Web3 help there?
Sure. So again, it's building blocks, right? We started the conversation talking about how, every time there's going to be a disruption, there needs to be a whole lot of building blocks that needs to happen, right? Now, the biggest challenge in the climate financing space is the large countries are now supposed to be supporting, the developing countries that have more nature-based solutions with funding, right? But at this point in time, it's been a lot of talk, and they have not been able to mobilize that. This is where Web3 will eventually serve that role, right? Everything is going to move onto the blockchain. There's going to be a whole lot of new trusts that will come into the space. And when that trust comes in, the private equity firms, the other financiers can start to participate in that space. And that's currently what we're building, right? We're building.
But Prakash, let me ask you a question. Why will they move to Web3?
I guess at this point in time, they need to find new ways that they can now participate in that space. Otherwise, it's hard to mobilize capital, right? It's hard to say, why should I be financing a project, let's say in Sri Lanka, when I can't see it, I can't feel it, I don't know what that impact is going to be, and I don't trust that place, right? There's
so
country
it's around transparency.
Exactly, and that's what the blockchain brings intrinsically. That's the key value proposition, right? And what we believe that everything from the time the land gets assessed, to measure what kind of carbon credits potentially could be created, till the time it gets monitored, everything needs to be done with technology. This is where AI is going to play a key role. but all that information needs to be stored somewhere safe.
Yeah, and you're right. I
It
think
needs to be decentralized, right?
I think one of the things, whether it needs to be decentralized or not, I'll leave it to you. I think one of the key things the report was saying was that it was very, very hard to track, right, what amount of capital was going towards climate financing.
That's right.
And I think they themselves in that report have taken an estimate or based on, I guess, some intelligent data points, right? And I can see how blockchain or the technologies which blockchain enables will allow that to do it. Coming back to your Launchpad,
Right.
is there an existing project that is looking at solving that, which you're bringing along with you to the Middle East?
Definitely. I mean, that's primarily what we're building on. It's still pretty early stage, but we're definitely looking at launching that at the later part of this year, hopefully before COP28. But the intent really is to kind of source projects from all around the world, ensure that they meet our stringent criteria, meet what we call a triple bottom line, right? It has to make money, it has to serve a purpose, and it has to make the world a better place. And these are the kind of projects.
And who
that
would
we're
be a
looking at.
target audience for these projects? Would it be the state-run bodies, the energy bodies, or would it be private sector players, or would it be
honestly,
both?
we're getting so much interest in the space. I think there are a lot of VCs who are now setting aside a percentage of their portfolio into some of these impact projects. We're speaking to investors in Europe where investing into impact projects is their primary need now, right? They only want to do these projects.
So I get the investment side of it. I'm talking more from a deployment side of it. So who's going to take these to market? So your platform, for example, your startup, right? So are you going to go talk to Diva? Are you going to talk to Diva? Are these the people who you will need to work with to take the platforms to the market, or?
So we're starting off with bringing these projects in, and then also kind of facilitating exactly what you spoke about, where the larger corporates come in and they support some of these guys. So that's what we're trying to serve. The Launchpad is not only to raise capital, but also to build local relationships, right? And we're also
because that's the fastest way to accelerate it, right?
Exactly. And what we're also hoping to do is get corporates to actually participate from an investment perspective, and eventually explore ways that they can leverage some of these startups into their ecosystems, right? So that's where the proof of funding comes in. We also ensured that, if a large corporate says that they are setting aside X amount of capital into green financing, we want to be able to allow them to prove that they've done this, and we'll be able to give them the report that they can actually include that shows that they've invested, there's the impact that is created, and all that is being tracked on the blockchain.
Okay, so here's a question, right? So I'm sorry, the challenging question. So what are the classic challenges that you face in terms of, I guess, setting up a Web3 impact and sustainability launchpad? So what's kind of the secret sauce out here in terms of managing the challenges? I
would say the biggest challenge is trust, right? And in any Web3 project, that's the key thing. We can put a good team, you have a good track record. The trust is always a big issue. And I think that's what regulations is going to provide, right? That everything is going to be done in a fit and proper way. And bringing that out, has been the key thing for us, right? Being able to communicate that effectively and, ensuring that everything is done right. I would say it's the biggest. From what I've experienced in the local market, everyone wants to invest, everyone wants to participate. They don't mind losing money, but they never want to be scammed, right? So if we can now ensure that no one's going to be scammed on a best effort basis, I think that's one easy way for us to actually onboard investors. Generally, there's been a lot of interest. It's now ensuring that we can deliver this with the best effort basis.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Dubai and UAE. You mentioned, right? So Dubai obviously is in the process of building out a campus for about 500, if I've got the number right, AI and Web3 businesses. I guess two-fold questions for you. One is, what's your response to that? And secondly, do you think Dubai has the necessary ecosystem to sort of deliver an ambition like that?
Sure. Again, I'll reflect on my personal journey, right?
Sure, please.
When we started to navigate the ecosystem. We explored the various free trade zones. We're trying to figure out what's going to be the best for us. And I still remember going back to meet my board, and they asked me, so which area are we going to be starting the company? And I couldn't answer that, right? Because each had its strengths, and figuring out where we're going to start from, was a challenge, really. And then, of course, we decided that we're going to be starting in Dubai. And then, of course, a lot of people asked us, why not Abu Dhabi and so on and so forth. So to be very honest, I feel having some support to actually navigate through that, identifying based on our business what's going to be the best regulation or jurisdiction to go with is actually still lacking. And when you come in alone, you get led to a whole lot of different discussions, and some do get more colorful than the clothes that I'm wearing. But what we really need is someone to kind of facilitate that, right? I think there's interest globally to be here, but to have the right local support to connect us end to end, from starting a company to opening a bank account and operationalizing very quickly. I think it's going to be important. To answer your second question, I feel there are ecosystem builders. Definitely, there are good guys in the space, but a lot more work needs to be done, right? And again, I reflect back on Singapore, right? And Singapore's done a phenomenal job when it comes to ecosystem building. We've got government-led initiatives, we've got private-led initiatives, and I've also been part of initiatives like ACE in Singapore, which is funded by the government but operated independently, and they provide end-to-end support when it comes to starting a company, right up to getting your company, raising capital, to even planning an exit. Is a facilitated process. In Singapore, it's guided. There's someone who holds our hands through that process. And I think that's still lacking here. And that's probably something that can be built upon in this region.
Okay. You mentioned Abu Dhabi, right? So around the same time, Abu Dhabi announced a fund, or Hub 71, which is in Abu Dhabi, announced a fund, I think of the size of $2 billion, if I'm not wrong, to invest in Web3 startups, right? Twofold question, right? So did that not attract you more in terms of access to capital? Because as you mentioned, capital is quite essential, at least in the early stages. Second part of the question is, would it not be more effective for the entire emirate of the UAE, the country of the UAE, that there was better coordination between Abu Dhabi and Dubai on this? Would that not just be more efficient in terms of accelerating this journey of becoming the Web3 hub of, I guess, the Middle East or even beyond?
So let me address the first part, right? I think, our circumstances led us to land in Dubai, and we did, our market scan in Dubai. On hindsight, we should have also expanded that to Abu Dhabi. And that I would say that each has its strengths. I think when we thought about the Abu Dhabi narrative and when we read up online, we felt that hiring talent was going to be quite tough, right? Because a lot of people still like the Dubai lifestyle, and we felt it was a softer landing for us here, and that's currently what we've built on. But what we've seen, there's a Singapore-based company called Air Carbon, and they got into Hub 71, and they've gotten, they're the national exchange for carbon trading at this point of time. Phenomenal success, and we are trying to follow their footsteps, right? So we're not ruling out Abu Dhabi at this point in time, but I would feel that at this point in time, anchoring our presence in Dubai is crucial, and we already embarked on that. We'll continue to build that. But to answer your bigger question, definitely, right? I think that clarity for a company like ourselves coming from a foreign country and having that ability to navigate, understanding what the strengths of each regulation is, and also potentially having a unified experience, right? Where we can start in Dubai and scale up in Abu Dhabi is what we hope is going to happen, because in Abu Dhabi, we would be able to do bigger things, right? It could be us setting up a regulated fund. It could be us kind of playing a bigger role. For us, we still see the UAE as a single country, but at the end of the day, in some contexts, Dubai is a country of its own, and Abu Dhabi is a country of its own, and each has its nuances.
No, it does, and I think it's a question that it's not just Web3 companies. I think it's a question that pretty much the entire startup economy in the UAE has to sometimes grapple with, because you do want unification to a certain level, because at the end of the day, even as a combined entity, the UAE is it's about 9 million people. There's a certain size of the economy, so on and so forth, and there's a number of other countries around the region which are now starting to sort of catch up and play play ball. So I think to remain competitive, in my humble opinion, I think the more synergies which could be exploited or leveraged between the two Emirates and the others, right? Because I do believe that there are some other Emirates which have ambitions in this space, which digital assets would only help. I'm going to ask a question. I don't know if this is something you're comfortable with, but it's been trending over the last few days. Talk to us a little bit about WorldCoin.
Wow, interesting. I feel what they're trying to build is to serve humanity, right? I feel at the core, that's a very, very important thing. I think technologies like this will enable universal basic income, which I personally have always been very, very passionate about. I constantly read about it. I feel it's a need for us. And the fact that someone who's creating the most disruptive technology is also now launching this, kind of gives me some comfort that whatever jobs that AI may displace, we believe that universal basic income will now come in to fill up. It's not going to replace it, right? We still need to work, but at least there's that soft landing of sorts that will come about. But I strongly believe that there's a need for a new decentralized financial system that is going to come to solve a lot of the pain that we're going to be experiencing because of AI. And I feel that it's important for a technology like that to be in place. Whether it's going to be Elon Musk or whether it's going to be WorldCoin, it's going to be a battle out there. But I heard that the op is somewhere in Dubai. I'm going to let them scan my eyeball and collect some of these WorldCoins. But I feel, as long as they're doing it responsibly, if they are taking our data and they're owning it and they are managing it responsibly, I'm all for it.
So the way I understand it is you get a world ID, right, which then provides you some sort of a identification which is multi-platform. So I guess there's a big interoperability challenge somewhere sitting behind there. And then they obviously, in lieu of you giving them your retina print or whatever it is, they issue you a token or a WorldCoin, which again is tradable, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's on the market now.
It's on the market already, right? Should I be buying? No, we're not going to get into investment advice. No, so I think novel concept. It seems to be getting some initial traction. I guess it would, because I'm
and
sure
controversy too.
But traction and controversy sort of goes together, right? So the second ChatGPT was launched. There were as many people who were against it. Now you have hundreds and hundreds of people telling you that I think we should do a halt on AI development. Right. I don't know how much of that is actually genuine concern versus how many of them feel that they've kind of lost the march, so they want to catch up, and so therefore they're slowing down. And I'm not in a position to sort of comment, but I found the concept quite interesting. That could we create a global identity mechanism? It'll be completely decentralized, because I don't know how many governments will adopt it.
Sure.
But I guess if the Web3 community decides that this becomes the default way of recognizing yourself, it actually addresses a number of the issues you have with scams and so on and so forth, and misrepresentation. No, that's great. Prakash, I want to thank you for coming in.
I got to be the one thanking you for
No. It's all right. It's a pleasure. We learned a lot. I do wish you the very best. I think it's a very interesting, I wouldn't call it a pivot, I call it an extension, that I think you are looking to address a topic that is not just topical, but I think, as you said, it is seriously important, right? I do agree that if everything that we read about in terms of the gap that exists with regards to, the funding, which could be a result of the lack of transparency, can be solved with, blockchain. And then if there are novel technologies which are Web3 powered, which can allow for carbon credits or whatever else to come through, I do think it would be. I think you are in a part of the world which is fairly progressive and wants to adopt these new technologies. And I don't only talk about the UAE, but I do extend the conversation across to Saudi Arabia, Qatar and other parts in this region where I do think that there is a demand. You're not too far from India, which is increasingly progressive. And then I think there are increasing links between Singapore and this part of the world which are actually forming. So I think it's fascinating. We'll obviously stay in touch and maybe even do something together in this area because it's of personal interest to me. So I'll stop rambling. Again, thank you to you, and best of luck with the venture in Dubai. And I do want to actually sign up to one of your Web3 games, if nothing else.
Sure.
I get my daughters onto them
Sounds
because they're
good.
the ones who actually teach me. Right? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Arjun. Thanks for the opportunity, and very, very honored to be here today. Really enjoyed the conversation, and hope to stay in touch and come back someday with more good news.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be. Right. So everybody, that was Prakash. As I said at the beginning, Prakash is the co-founder and CEO of Enjinstarter. They're a launchpad and an advisory firm out of Singapore. And as you heard, they've got a two-sided model. They don't only just raise capital to deploy, but they actually try and stay with the life cycle of these Web3 startups, which come at very early stages, and they stay with them. They've started their businesses in the UAE. They're currently obviously based out of Dubai, but apparently have clear ambitions to not only just be in the UAE, but beyond. I'm sure you'll hear a lot about it, a lot about them. But for today, goodbye and see you next week.